I'd like to now take a look at the concepts of securing connectivity with hybrid networks. Now, I want to also talk real quick just about how this diagram is set up. This is a diagram from Microsoft's official website on this, and the things you're looking at, first off, you've got the on-premise network right here, and the on-premise network, you'll notice they've got some virtual machines, they've got their routing devices, they've got their VPN connection and virtual network gateway that is associating this VPN connection with the cloud. Now, of course, they could also have a Microsoft domain associated with all this as well. All right, so you're dealing with a on-premise network, all right, that is hosting virtual machines, probably in a Hyper-V environment, since this is Microsoft and all. All right, they've got their own routing going on, and then they have their own VPN routing going on, and that's what we're looking at here. All right, so then over here we have the Hub Virtual Network, or Hub VNet. This is hosted in Azure. Okay, and we've got a Spoke VNet, which is also being hosted in Azure. All right, and this again is pretty traditional in the Azure environment to set up what's called a hub and spoke based scenario. All right, so the hub, this is our main connectivity with the internet usually. All right, and so what all we have going on here? Well, first off, we have this thing called a bastion, and bastions are used whenever you want to allow an HTTPS connection to manage virtual machines and connect into virtual machines. So it does cost some money, but what a Azure Bastion is going to let us do is allow us to connect in from the internet securely, and we would be able to manage these virtual machines using something like RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. Okay, so that's what a Bastion is used for. We have the Azure Firewall, which of course the Azure Firewall is a full-blown firewall. It's a virtual firewall that's hosted in Azure, and most of the time what happens is in a hub virtual network, we're going to force all traffic to have to go through that Azure Firewall. So if it's coming in from a private network, if it's coming in from the internet, even these spoke-based virtual machines, if they're trying to connect to something, everything's going to have to funnel through that Azure Firewall. Okay, so it's a very common strategy. You can use routing capabilities in Azure to force traffic to have to go through that Azure Firewall. All right, so then right here you got the virtual network gateway, and of course this virtual network gateway is actually connected to a VPN router of some kind, or VPN gateway that you would actually be hosting in your on-premise network. All right, and it's using a IPsec IKE tunnel. That's Internet Protocol Security, and the IKE tunnel is the Internet Key Exchange tunnel, which is a VPN-based protocol that is used. So very common nowadays. IPsec is incredibly powerful, incredibly secure. It's been around now for over 22, 23 years, something like that, and been a very popular way to secure traffic flowing between a internal network to the internet. In this case, you're actually funneling across the internet. Now, one thing this diagram is not really talking about is you could be using what's called ExpressRoute, which would be a dedicated private connection from your on-premise network to the cloud as well. And it wouldn't be too different than this. All right, you would still make everything funnel through the Azure Firewall. All right. So over here, the Spoke network. From there, they've set up a routing table here. That's what this is actually trying to represent in this case. It's a routing table, and the routing table is going to force traffic to flow into this Azure Firewall. There's also another thing they're not showing is there could be a load balancer involved here too to load balance traffic between the VMs if it was like a web server scenario. All right. So the main thing to take away here when it comes to securing connectivity with hybrid networks is the on-premise network. You definitely don't want just to have like a public address coming into the cloud with no security going on. In this case, if you're allowing traffic to flow to that on-premise network, you're either A, going to want to do this right here, which would be utilizing a virtual network gateway, okay, or VPN gateway as it's called, or B, use ExpressRoute, which is of course more expensive, but that's a dedicated connection that we purchased through a telecommunications provider with Microsoft. Okay, and everything should have to flow into here, but then it would have to go into that firewall before we allow it to talk to the Spoke network and then potentially get to these web servers. Now, the other thing of note here again is if you're talking about the Azure Bastion, that would involve admins that need to manage these VMs, and they might be outside. So if you had admins that were, or users that were outside of the on-premise network working from home or something like that, and they're coming in from the internet, they would have to go through this Bastion network. And even then, the Bastion network can still have to go through the firewall before it can talk to these VMs. Okay. The last thing of note here, as far as security goes, would be the Azure Monitor. Microsoft's Azure Monitor can be monitoring all aspects of this. So as you can see, this gray dotted arrow here, it's showing that the Bastion is checking in with the Azure Monitor, the firewall's checking in with Azure Monitor. All of this going on here, the Virtual Private Network, VPN Gateway, all the routing that's happening is checking in. All your virtual machines are checking in. So everything here is checking in. And of course, they're not illustrating this fully in this diagram, but the on-premise network can actually communicate with the Azure Monitor as well. So the Azure Monitor can be logging pretty much everything that's going on, and this would help you in regards to troubleshooting. And if you started implementing like Azure Sentinel and all of that, that gives you some extra capabilities when it comes to dealing with security monitoring and all that. Okay, this isn't really a video about monitoring, but I did want to point those things out. All right, so that should help you now with some of the fundamentals of understanding the security behind connectivity with hybrid networks. Hey, this is John Christopher. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want you to know that I'm trying really hard to grow this channel, so I hope you'll give me a like and a subscribe. Also, if you'll check the description in this video, I've got a link for you that can show you how you can get access to all my different courses. I have lots of different Microsoft certification courses that'll help you pass your exam. All right, thanks a lot for watching the video, and I hope to see you again.